Welcome to Wisdom Unveiled. We're kicking off a 12-part journey today.
That's right.
Looking into Khajeh Nasir Tusi. Now, he's a really towering figure in Islamic intellectual history.
Absolutely.
And you might know his name, perhaps mainly from, theology.
That's common.
But here's something maybe a bit surprising. This incredibly influential person was also a profound philosopher.
Yes, profoundly so.
And his unique way of thinking, his approach to knowledge through dialogue, it actually holds some remarkable insights for us, even now.
It really does.
So think of this deep dive as maybe your shortcut to understanding why Tusi really matters.
Exactly. While his theology is, undeniable and widely known,
Right.
the sheer depth and breadth of his philosophical work, that often gets a bit less airtime.
I see.
So for this deep dive, we've really gone into discussions from the Iranian program Maarefat. Featuring insights from Dr. Ebrahim Dinani and Dr. Esmail Mansouri Larijani. They offer some really compelling perspectives on Khajeh Nasir Tusi's, multifaceted genius.
Sounds fascinating. So our mission here is really to uncover the full spectrum of Tusi's intellect.
Yes.
With a particular focus maybe on his philosophy and the huge role that dialogue played in how he pursued knowledge.
Precisely. And just a quick note for you listening. This exploration is based on translations of conversations with Iranian philosophers.
Right, that's important.
So naturally, some nuances might be subtly different from the original Persian. We do apologize in advance if there are any potential discrepancies.
Understood. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Who was this Khajeh Nasir Tusi?
Well, he was born in Tus, lived for 57 years, and passed away in Kazmin back in 672 AH.
And interestingly, he's buried near the revered imams, Imam Khatim and Imam Javad.
That's right, which really speaks volumes about his deep faith, his devotion.
What strikes me immediately, though, is the sheer scope of his mind.
Oh, absolutely. Tusi wasn't just a theologian. He was a master of, everything, it seems. Philosophy, logic, ethics, mysticism,
Mathematics, astronomy.
even medicine. It's almost hard to get your head around, isn't it? That level of expertise across so many different fields.
It really is. And his book, Tajrid al-Itikad, roughly Liberation of Belief, focusing on Islamic creed, that's had an incredible legacy.
Foundational.
For over 700 years, it's been a central text in theology. It sparked countless commentaries from both Sunni and Shia scholars.
And even those who, disagreed with his points still had to acknowledge the power of his thinking, his writing.
Right.
And adding a really fresh perspective now is Dr. Ebrahim Dinani's recent book. It's titled Khajeh Nasir Tusi, Philosopher of Dialogue.
That title says a lot.
It really does. It shines a light specifically on Tusi's deep engagement with dialogue as a core part of his whole philosophical method.
Okay, so that brings us back to that point you made earlier, the common idea of Tusi mainly being a theologian.
Yeah.
His theological work is significant, no doubt, but it's crucial we understand that his philosophical depth often gets, overlooked.
Precisely. He definitely engaged in theology, but his intellect went so much further. I mean, think about his work in astronomy.
The Maragheh Observatory.
Exactly. A huge scientific achievement. It's just one testament to his incredibly wide-ranging knowledge.
So why the relative neglect, then, of his philosophical side? It seems like there might be different reasons, historically speaking.
Well, it's quite interesting how his reception differed. Among Sunni scholars, his involvement in the events around the fall of the Abbasid Caliphate, that seems to have cast a bit of a shadow.
Okay.
So on the other hand, within Shia scholarship, while his theology is celebrated, his really groundbreaking work in logic and philosophy, historically, it just hasn't always gotten the same level of focus. Though thankfully, as Dr. Dinani and Dr. Larijani point out, more recent scholarship is definitely starting to, correct that imbalance.
Yet the sources emphasize he was, without any doubt, a deeply devout Shia scholar.
Clearer than the sun, as they say. And if you think about the bigger picture, the Shia intellectual tradition owes a massive debt to Tusi.
How so?
Well, it's been argued, pretty convincingly, I think, that without his efforts, philosophy might not have kept its vibrant presence within Shia thought.
Really?
Yeah. He essentially paved the way for later major figures like Mullah Sadra, who built so much on the foundations Tusi laid.
Wow. Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating then. Tusi seems to emerge as this, pivotal figure who revitalized deep philosophical thinking in the Islamic world.
Yes, especially after the huge challenge from Ghazali's Tafut al-Falasifa.
The incoherence of the philosophers.
Right. And this highlights a really critical point about how intellectual history unfolded. In many Sunni-majority areas, philosophy kind of faded over time.
And was eventually replaced by Western traditions.
Largely, yes, in more recent centuries. But in contrast, philosophy didn't just survive in Iran, it actually flourished. And that continuity, a huge part of that is attributed to Tusi's dedicated work.
Now, usually when we think about defending philosophy against Ghazali, the name Ibn Rushd or Averroes comes up.
Right, the famous refutation.
But these discussions we're drawing on, they offer a more, let's say, nuanced view.
Yeah, an important context. While Ibn Rushd absolutely wrote his Tahafut al-Tahafut against Ghazali, his work also had significant criticisms of Ibn Sina.
Okay.
And it stayed very much rooted in, Aristotelian thought. Tusi, on the other hand, is presented as a more comprehensive, maybe less dogmatic, champion of philosophy and reason across the broader Islamic intellectual landscape.
Which brings us perfectly back to that book title, Philosopher of Dialogue.
Exactly. It's not just a catchy phrase. It gets to the heart of how Tusi actually did philosophy.
So what does that mean, dialogue is his method? How is it different from just, say, debate?
That's a great distinction. The focus here is on dialogue, or goftogu, which is really about mutual understanding. It's different from jadl, debate, which often aims to win an argument.
Or munazara, polemics.
Right, which can be much more adversarial. Tusi, as this philosopher of dialogue, was primarily involved in respectful, reasoned exchange, grounded in philosophical principles and, crucially, fairness.
Can you give some examples from his work? The commentary on Ibn Sina's Isharat, maybe.
Yes, that's a perfect example. His commentary on Remarks and Admonitions, it goes way beyond just explaining Ibn Sina's text.
Okay.
While he engages deeply, Tusi is also subtly addressing and often refuting the criticisms that Fakhr al-Din al-Razi had previously made against Ibn Sina.
So it's a dialogue with Razi, in a way.
In a way, yes. But what's really telling is the style. Tusi's approach is so much more measured, less combative than al-Razi's often was.
Interesting. What about his work, Wrestling with Wrestling? That title sounds confrontational.
It does, doesn't it? Musara'at la musara. It was his response to Abd al-Karim al-Shahrastani's book, Musara'at al-Falasifa, The Wrestling of the Philosophers.
Okay, so Shahrastani was wrestling with the philosophers.
Exactly. And coming from an Ash'ari theological background, he was often quite critical, viewing philosophy with some suspicion. His wrestling was, well, pretty critical.
Right.
Tusi's wrestling, in contrast, is marked by this reasoned, eloquent engagement. He's aiming to clarify and defend philosophical ideas, not just tear down the opponent. It's a different kind of wrestling match, you could say.
And he didn't just write responses. He also engaged through letters, right? With people like Khusro Shahi and Sadr al-Din Qanawi.
Yes, absolutely. His correspondence, for instance, with Khusro Shahi in Damascus, or with the great Sufi master Qanawi, who was Ibn Arabi's successor, these exchanges really showcase his ability to engage respectfully with a whole range of intellectual perspectives.
Philosophy, mysticism.
Exactly. He could bridge those worlds through dialogue.
So the argument being made is that, for Tusi, philosophy wasn't just helped by dialogue, it was dialogue. Kind of like Socrates.
That's a really insightful way to put it. And this idea, it even extends to our own internal thinking.
How do you mean?
Well, philosophical reflection, even when you're just sitting alone thinking, isn't that a kind of internal dialogue? A questioning and answering within yourself that goes beyond just, daily worries.
I never thought of it quite like that, like an inner conversation.
Precisely. There's a mention in the audio of a beautiful Persian poem
Yeah.
that talks about an inner speaker revealing secrets. It captures that idea perfectly, this internal dialogue as the very source, the wellspring of real philosophical inquiry.
So the key takeaway is that Tusi's work, his entire output, embodies this dialogical spirit.
Yes, characterized by a real lack of rigid fanaticism and this deep commitment to reasoned discussion.
And now let's put this into context. Consider the time he lived in the aftermath of the Mongol invasion. Just devastating chaos.
Unbelievably challenging times. His dedication to intellectual work, then, is even more remarkable.
He even wrote a verse about it, didn't he? Something like being a gem surrounded by calamity.
Yes! Calamity is the ring, and I am the gem. It vividly captures that sense of crisis.
Wow. Just immense hardship all around. And yet, Tusi consciously chose this path, intellectual inquiry, promoting rationality right in the middle of it all.
It seems his conviction was that, ultimately, human salvation lies in rational thought.
Right. And that power without reason, like Genghis Khan or Pharaoh, only leads to destruction.
What's truly amazing is how he managed to use his influence with the Mongol rulers, with Hulagu Khan specifically.
Yes, this is incredibly significant.
Yeah.
He didn't just retreat. He skillfully leveraged his position to actually foster intellectual growth.
How?
He secured the Ministry of Endowments, the Akof, and used those resources to establish the Maragheh Observatory,
Which became a major center.
a world-class center. He gathered leading scholars there from all over. And the library?
The library at Maragheh, yes. The numbers are staggering.
Around 400,000 books, according to the sources.
Yeah.
Just imagine, in that era.
It's incredible. It really shows his strategic brilliance, doesn't it? Absolutely. He managed to transform the destructive power of the Mongols into a force for intellectual advancement, turning the sword into a pen, essentially.
And the legacy of Maragheh lives on. Even modern astronomers acknowledge its importance.
Without a doubt, its contributions were foundational.
So, connecting this back to his philosophy, it's clear his work wasn't just theoretical. It laid practical groundwork.
Yes, vital groundwork for later developments, especially for someone like Mullah Sadra. Tusi really solidified rationalist thought within Shia Islam, contributing hugely to the intellectual flowering of the later Safavid period.
Okay, let's dig a bit deeper now into the principles of his dialogue. Based on Dr. Dinani's analysis of his etiquette and method of dialogue.
Ingeni Avier Uyer, yes. What's really revealing is how deeply rooted his approach was in Quranic teachings. Specifically the verse, invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom and good instruction, and argue with them in a way that is best. Chi say, and si you do it also see you. I agree you see, and
And it's crucial to remember his strong Shia faith informed how he understood and applied this.
Profoundly. So let's break down those key parts as Tusi and Dr. Dinani interpreting him understood them. Es yush, with wisdom.
What does wisdom mean here exactly?
It means precision, soundness, rational, demonstrative speech, a deep grasp of the subject. The root word connects to firmness, established, so it implies intellectual rigor.
Okay, wisdom is rigorous understanding. Then kedu, with good instruction or advice.
Right. This part is seen as more for those who might not be immediately swayed by pure rational argument. It emphasizes gentleness, good conduct, avoiding harshness or irrelevance, meeting people where they are, in a sense.
And the final part. Keishi shu thyself, argue with them in a way that is best.
This points to a noble, fair kind of debate. Totally different from biased polemics or just trying to score points. It's about the best way to argue, the most constructive way.
So a core part of his approach was intellectual freedom, avoiding dogma.
Absolutely. A real rejection of dogmatic prejudice. He was always willing to re-examine assumptions, engage thoughtfully with different views. His main goal was the auna, the search for wisdom.
The pursuit of wisdom.
And he believed a wise person shows the seeker the clearest, simplest path to that wisdom.
The discussions mentioned other characteristics too, right? Things we might explore more later.
Yes. Several key aspects, like his clear lack of fanaticism or prejudice, his stress on eloquence, balagha as necessary for conveying wisdom effectively.
Ethical principles.
Deep respect for ethics, yes. Also, a remarkably high level of receptivity, open-mindedness, what's termed ethologish and adapting his approach.
Exactly. Adhering to the specific principles of theology when doing theology, philosophy when doing philosophy, mysticism within mysticism, and so on. Maintaining disciplinary rigor.
Which the sources contrast with, what was the phrase, a disorganized marketplace. The H.A. Shaw of some contemporary thought, yes. Where interdisciplinary work can sometimes become superficial, just mixing things without deep expertise in each area, like an o-ausha o-shaw, a stew where everything gets mushed together.
Right. Tusi wasn't doing that. He kept the fields distinct, even as he mastered many.
Precisely. He was a theologian as a theologian, a philosopher as a philosopher. It's rigor within each domain.
And that's different from someone like Mullah Sadra.
Very different. It's important not to mischaracterize Sadra's synthesis as just eclectic mixing. He transcended existing schools to create something genuinely new, an original framework, not just stowing the pot.
Got it. Okay, so wrapping up this first deep dive into Khajeh Nasir al-Din Tusi, we've touched on his life, the incredible breadth of his knowledge, and this foundational idea of dialogue in his method.
Yes, and understanding how he conducted dialogue with reason, respect, deep knowledge really offers us valuable tools, I think, for navigating our own complex discussions today.
It really makes you think. So here's a final thought for you, listening. How might consciously adopting some of Khajeh Nasir al-Din Tusi's principles, the commitment to reasoned, respectful, knowledgeable dialogue, actually help us have more productive, more insightful conversations in our own world?
Something to ponder.
Definitely. And this is just the first step in our 12-part exploration of Tusi's wisdom. We're looking forward to the next deep dive, where we'll unpack more of his thought and how he applied these principles.